Let me just introduce Amira. Amira, it's good to see you again. We had another event that we did for CPE, and it's really great to see her again. She is a leadership coach and educator who uses her 15 years of experience in education and training to create engaging and interactive learning experiences at UT. She teaches leadership and communication courses for the Center for Professional Education, and she frequently presents for Texas MBA Plus program, their leadership program, which is leadership program at Macomb's School of Business. So we're really honored to have her with us today. Amira, I'll let you get started, and I'm going to turn off my camera, but I'm still going to be here. So looking forward to this really exciting presentation. And you can explain sort of the workbook and everything. And if we need to, we can share that workbook in the chat as well. Thanks, Amira.
Thank you. All right, so let's see this. You should see the workbook and the share screen now as well. I'm going to take you all through this workbook and do a walkthrough. Won't be able to fill it all out together today, of course, but I want to make sure that you get some of it filled out now, because getting started can be one of the hardest parts. But you all did step one, you showed up, you're here. So that's awesome. I want to make sure that I help you get started. Just like with a personal trainer or coach, it's a lot easier to do that with someone alongside you. And also because I don't want you to work on this later and have questions come up without support. So we're going to go through this deep enough so that you hopefully do get questions, which are very likely relevant to lots of people here. So as you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. You definitely don't need to wait until the end. It's going to help everyone to do questions as we go. And if you have difficult ones that you think are relevant to everyone, throw them at me. Let's talk about it. So the first question to get us going is, think about when you were a kid and people asked you, what was your answer to what do you want to be when you grow up? And as I ask you these questions, feel free to put your answer in the chat. It doesn't have to be a sentence. It could just be like writer or astronomer, or whatever that was, if you are comfortable sharing. So I see them coming in now. What did you want to be when you grew up? And when did you last think about this question? And then be thinking about, would you still like to do that? Or are you doing that now? And then finally, if you could do anything now, what would you do? Finances weren't a challenge. Getting into it wasn't a challenge. If there was nothing holding you back, what would you do now? Dream career. I think it's really important for us to dial back to the things that we were passionate about, even from a really young age, because what we're going to talk about soon is our patterns of strengths and how that starts early on and continues now. And we want to make sure that our strengths are being used. Then think about, what aspect of your job do you love the most right now? And then I would even write down on paper or on the workbook on this page, how much time weekly do you spend on that? So the part of your job that you love the most, how much time do you spend on that now? If it's a small amount, then that's something to highlight and come back to. So I'm seeing supporting students, not enough time on everything that we love right now, own my own business, want to help people, counselor, writer, occupational therapist, serving students, banker, like the bankers in Mary Poppins, animal rescue, Habitat for Humanity. That is the question. Yep, that's why we're looking at these. Astronaut or truck driver. I love the diversity of all of this. Diversity issues. Okay. So taking risks is how we can get closer to our dream areas. And the growth to get there is when we leave our comfort zone. So as we push through, ending with the goals, I hope that you can commit to, at the end of the workbook planning, to go forward, be aware that it's going to be for leaving your comfort zone, because that's where the growth happens. And so I want to help you get poised for some strategic growth that brings you in the right direction. And looking at the bold in the next page of the handout, if you're following along on the screen or on your paper, someone once said that no matter how fast you travel, you'll never reach your destination if you're moving in the wrong direction. So we want to make sure that we have a plan to get you closer to where you want to be. And this assessment is so helpful to have in here. It's really important. When I work with my MBA students, they come in, they've taken a variety of assessments through programs, and they have a very clear idea of what their strengths are, what skills they have already, and what skills they want to leverage and work on to reach the goals they want. So I would say this is one of the most important sheets for us to go over. So take a moment and think about, what are you passionate about? And I would start writing down some of your top strengths. If you already know your top 3 strengths, you can write them down. If you don't immediately think of some strengths, that's another thing that I always coach to work on. If you aren't feeling confident in some strengths that you have off the top of your head, you want to have that. You always want to have that in your back pocket. So when you do leave your comfort zone and you do challenging things, you can look back on the strengths that led you to some of your successes, those building blocks. And then I'm also going to put your attention on those top 3 skills that you have. And this is an area where I'm anticipating there might be some confusion there. What are strengths? What are skills? What's the difference? So the strengths, you want to be thinking about something that you're naturally good at, that gets better as you do more of it. And it's something that comes through not just in your current role, but if you look at past roles, different trends, you'll see them there as well. These strengths can come through in personal and family and home life and times with friends as well. So skills are a learned ability to do something well, but it's not just innate. You don't just automatically know it. So a strength might be that you pick up on languages really quickly. A skill would be basic competency in a language. A strength could be that you have good attention to detail. A skill could be writing technical articles. Or a strength is analytical thinking. The skill is budget spreadsheets. I'm going to pause for a moment for you all to start filling that in. So another example of a strength could be wordplay. A skill could be writing articles. Or a strength could be connecting to others. The skill could be presenting at conferences. And then the thing to ask yourself here is, are all 3 of your top strengths used in your current job right now? And the next step to think about isn't, no, they aren't, I'm going to do a huge change, but to start organically with, how can you use more of your strengths in your current role starting this year? And I see a question, it's in the panelists area. So Q&A is better for it, but I'm going to assume you might want to be anonymous. So the question is, for strengths, would you recommend using your top 3 strengths from the Clifton Strengths Survey? So I would say there's so many out there, and I have clients who have loved a variety of surveys. Some of the basics you can do for free, but the extensive ones do cost money. So it's what might be available for you and also what you like or what you need. There's also some great tips in this workbook for you to get this on your own and through colleagues and family and getting that information for free. So I would say start that way, and then do some of the ones online where it's the initial area where there's not an extra cost to that. But there are definitely people who will tell you they love a certain one. I don't feel strongly tied to any particular one. I just think it's good to know what they are identified. So now you're looking at which of these core values resonate with you. And this is very straightforward. So we're going to take just a minute if you'd like to jump in and start looking at that. And there also might be some missing. And so you're also welcome to write in something. But being able to check some of these boxes and have that in your role or bring it into your role can bring a lot more meaning and satisfaction to people in their jobs. I filled this whole thing out as well. And when I did this one, it reminded me of, oh yeah, this is one I really like. This makes me happy. I want to do more of this. Or yes, I'm doing this alignment. Great. So be thinking about those reactions as you go through. And there's some of them that you might be like, oh, I definitely don't value that. Great, like own that. And I see a question, should you limit the number of core values you choose? You could think about it as a top 5, so it's not overwhelming, but for first filling it out, no, I would say check all the ones that really resonate with you. I have probably about 15 checked. And you'll also see that there's some that are related. So if you check a whole lot, you're going to see some patterns that emerge also that will lead you to what really matters to you. And this might change, and that's also natural. So moving on to page 3, what occupational areas interest you? This is also really straightforward, and I would argue that you might not fully know this yet. You might just have some ideas. Some of the areas that I've gone into for work and loved, I didn't even know existed right away. So one great thing about UT is there's so many events. And now with it virtual, if you miss an event, that's still no excuse because it's available on YouTube or to view later or to see highlights. So a great way if you're like, this might be interesting, but I'm not sure about something in communications. We'll look at UT's communications department calendar and see what's out there. So now we're on page 4, describe your optimal work environment. Another one that I feel is very straightforward. So this is one you can fill out on your own. I don't think you want to get super picky on this because you will need to be flexible. But bottom line is if you're learning that work from home makes you want to pull your hair out, take that into strong consideration. Don't jump into an opportunity that is strictly work from home. If you really don't want to be around a lot of people or you love being around people, those are things that are really important to notice. Some of the preferences here you can't always control. And page 5 is also very straightforward. It's looking at different variations to elevator pitch. So here it's saying, write your career story. And many of you probably don't like elevator pitches. I coach a lot on this topic for that reason. It can be very tricky. And so now you have one way to get that narrative started. And in this area, it's to help you identify the trends you've been working on through this page. But I am going to pause on page 6 because I feel that there's a lot we can talk about here when we're looking at explore your potential. One of the biggest challenges here is actually ourselves and our doubts and fears and needing to get out of our own way to look at this. So I've always dreamed of being looking at that first box, and then moving forward into what that could look like, these different possibilities. A lot of clients I work with tend to start off with, oh, well, I couldn't do that, or, oh, I'm not qualified for that. I don't know. So instead of letting the fear of failure hold you back and having doubts, try and flip that on its head and think about positive what ifs. What if I become great at this and I love it. What if I can learn this? It aligns with my strengths and it brings me new opportunities. What if I try this out? I learn I don't actually like it and I'm able to move on. So go ahead and fill out one of the tabs going down. So I've always dreamed of being the preconditions and requirements are to realize this dream, I need to. And if you don't know the requirements and preconditions, great. Now you've identified a gap. That's the next steps, is figure out what this is. What do you need to fill in there? What does that look like? And here's where you want to be curious. Yes, I'm interested and I can look at this. I can try this. We have a network here. So through all of these events, you've got a network through the chat. You've got other events coming up and a huge network within UT. So if there's something that you're interested in, you can learn about it right on campus through the events and resources that you have here. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing pivot. So an example of that would be if you get emails to help out or attend events. And I've been working at UT in some capacity since 2006. And there's events, all kinds of different things for event planning or for a etiquette meal or a big showcase in an evening. And so you could go to those and you might figure out like, wow, I really don't like event planning, which is just as useful as I love event planning. And so those are ways for you to get to know other things as well.
Do you mind if I make a comment here?
Sure.
So I just want to comment about how this is so well aligned with, our previous sessions so far. And just as an example with this one, Binta and I last time talked about the importance of not only defining what's in scope, but equally as important, defining what's out of scope. Like knowing and articulating what you don't want to do is really important because it allows you to narrow your focus and really think about what you do want to do. Because if it's so broad, that you just don't know where to get started, you can't get a purchase on something, it's really difficult to get moving.
I learned, well, I'll give you all a chance to learn about me through a little guessing game. So the first job that I had when I finished my undergrad degree at Rice, I'm going to give you 3 options to guess. And if you want to type it in the chat to everyone, we can see some of the guesses coming in. Was my first job out of college a 6th grade English teacher, a academic advisor, or an office manager? So 6th grade teacher, academic advisor, office manager. Seeing a bunch of guesses. So it was actually a 6th grade English teacher, but I have held all 3 of those positions at some point in the past few years. And I've learned that I didn't like being an office manager, for example, but when I was an office manager at UT, I got to take classes on management essentials, which absolutely helped me when I am teaching management courses and doing work with managers who want to get better at other skills. I learned that people think I'm very organized. That's actually not a strength of mine. I can make it happen, but it made me sad. I didn't like it. So some of you might realize, hey, I'm really great at all of these things, but just because you're great at something doesn't mean it's going to bring you satisfaction or you should do it all the time. But you also want to be flexible and not super picky. So the moving into office manager was the best thing for my team at the time. And so I did that for a bit. And while I was doing that, though, I had other opportunities come up that have led me towards what I'm doing now, which I love. Career paths don't tend to be in a straight line. There can be ups and downs and sideways things, and that's completely normal. So getting to your next steps shouldn't look totally perfect and clean. That's going to hold you back. It's going to be some missteps and mistakes and trying different things, stepping outside of your comfort zone as you grow. So continuing this explore your potential. What have you always dreamed of being? Look at those requirements. Does anyone have questions about filling that out before we move on? Okay, so I see someone saying that they're just not happy with what they're doing right now. So filling this area out, really getting close to your values and your strengths will help you step back and think more about that. And to think about what has made you happy. So I mentioned office management wasn't my favorite thing, but while I was doing that job, I also did student employee training. I helped with the program and I taught sessions, and I realized I really love this professional development. And when I took my management essentials through Career Smart at UT, which was many, many years ago, I'm sure there's different programs now, but when I did that, I had training courses for each of the levels, and I had never done something like that before. And I was like, I want to be the instructor. I want to do that. And that's what I'm doing with CPE and doing here now. But it was still many years down the line before I made that work. So for this page, write down the name of someone that you want to reach out to who does cool stuff at UT, and you want to spend like a 10-minute Zoom call or something, or someone who was a past boss or a colleague, or even just a friend or family member, to try to figure out, like, what are some things that you think I might like or that you see as my strengths. And then you might disagree with them, but that also is progress. That's going to help you examine where you're going to go next. When I coach clients that are ready to discuss their strengths, their skills, and their interests, which is the beginning of this workbook, that's going to help you target that. That's where they see a lot of progress, because then you're going to be looking at what are your skill gaps to get you to things that you would really enjoy. And if you're not sure, things that get you to use your strengths more, things that get you to be aligned with your values more. Because the trainings, I believe, next week are going to be skills targeted. So you want to come in with ideas of some of the skills that you want to target, or at least some of the areas, leadership or communication or whatever that looks like. There's also clubs, professional organizations, and volunteer opportunities at UT. So that's another way to try things out, see what you like, don't like, good at or not good at, and also simply be a team player. Get to know other roles around you. When I was getting my master's degree, another friend in education was working part-time at Macomb School of Business. And I was working in the props department, which was in the basement and very dusty, and I have allergies. So everything was really, really high up to get to on ladders, and I'm 5 feet tall. So not like the dream fit you would think. And so I said, well, how are you working at Macomb's? Aren't you taking classes in the education program? And she said, well, yes, but I went online and I saw an opportunity there. And back then I hadn't thought of that. So you are already part of a huge network. And so you want to make sure you're not limited there. Also, if you take on a leadership role with a professional organization, that's another way to be out there as someone who is helpful and let people get to know what your strengths are.
Amira, I'd like to just comment here too. You mentioned the upcoming other sessions. You're right. I mean, next week we have LinkedIn to come in and just talk about how you can really explore the different videos and courses in LinkedIn that can help you develop those strengths. So doing this workbook is really going to help you sort of lay the foundation of where you can focus your development. And then, of course, after that, learning development I will be giving a little talk about the resources internal to UT But there are a lot of other things we'll be talking about that will be helpful for people that might attend from outside UT. And then Melissa is going to do some more about how to identify strengths. And then Leslie is going to talk about networking, which is so hugely important. But if you haven't done this groundwork that this workbook provides, it's going to be more difficult to apply the networking concepts, right? So going through this workbook is great, just foundational start to get going.
And also to be aware of cross-training that you have. So if you've been with your department for a long time and are really familiar with it, if you know some of the UT forms and databases, or you're familiar with student course requirements, those are all things that are going to help if there's something you wanted to add on even to a current role, or do something that's in a similar team in a department. It's not all just like separate and from scratch and big pivots when you're at UT. And I see a question: what is the best place to reference what clubs and professional organizations there are at UT? So
I can respond to that if you want afterwards.
Yes,
after you give a
thank
response,
you.
I can send out a link. But
Great.
I think one of the things that Amira is probably referring to are the URGs, the university resource groups. Those are great. And then there are other groups that are involved, even great groups that do so much good work, like staff council. Those are a great way to do a lot of good and meet some people and just kind of network in that way. But I'll try and find a link, Bridget, that I'll send out in the chat. Good question.
And
there's
I see
another one there too.
Yeah. There's a bunch coming in. Good. This one is for new jobs. Do you have a rule of thumb for figuring out if you really like the job, or if it's just a temporary onboarding frustration figuring things out? That's a great question also. I would say when I first started at UT, I was told it would take me a full year to get all the nuts and bolts. And I thought, no way, that's not possible. But my boss was right. Absolutely, it took a full year, but that's where I say there's a lot of cross training that comes in as well, where once you've learned that, a lot of it's UT details that are helpful to know for long term. Otherwise, for this, I would say that's something where you want to find someone trusted in your organization that you can share frustrations with, to try and tease out how you can make things better in the short term, and then long term, you're going to want to be checking in more and seeing. But I would say go back, fill this out fully. Does it align with your values? Does it align with your strengths? Because if not, that's two big red flags right there. So now we're looking at evaluate your options. And here's where I would say this example is looking at some very dramatic pivots. A lot of organizations, it's going to be more dramatic. At UT, I don't see it as having to be this limiting. I think you can start with smaller steps, but very forward momentum. I had a colleague who was really interested in development. And so when she joined our team at UT, we actually hired her in part because she had an interest and some background in development. And we thought that would be really useful for us. And so because of that, she got to do a lot of UT training on development. She started a new program for us in that area. And that gave her enough experience for her to move into a different college, but still at UT with a development job, where that was all she was doing for her job. So that's an example of someone who is able to really benefit from a focus on this side area. And the organization benefited too, because even when she left our team, we had the program that she had been working on. Those are stories that I hear from people at UT all the time. That you can be leaning into is, what are you interested in? How can you do it in your current role? And that's value added for the team a lot too. You can find something that benefits both of you. And she also might have learned the opposite. She wasn't interested in development, which would have been great to learn, because it could have been that she went into that role not prepared, not with enough experience, or she went into it and realized that she didn't like it. So these are ways to more organically take those steps in the right direction, knowing that if you aren't interested, there's still a way to move around before taking a huge leap. So you want to be really flexible. If you're feeling stuck, know that you don't have to continue being stuck. It's not too late. And if you want to do something completely different from what you're doing now, that's also okay. It's not too late to have a totally different job. I know someone who was a fantastic criminal lawyer and was in courts all the time, and then decided when she was in her 50s, she wanted to be a realtor.
And Amanda had a really interesting question, but I might need her to elaborate unless, Amira, you understand it. Is there someone within broader UT that has enough insight into the different areas to assist with determining what is out there? I'm not sure, Amanda, if you're referring to career options or not. And Amira, unless you know what she means, I could open up her mic if she wants to elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, if she wants to elaborate, that would be great.
Okay, Amanda, your mic should be open if you want to share. If not, that's totally fine. Just letting you know your mic is open. Just need a little bit more information.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I am thinking like career options. Personally, I have a lot of history and I've worked in my same career for a very long time, but I've been interested in kind of expanding and doing things that are a bit different. And I feel like at UT, because things are so segmented and separated, it's hard to even like get an idea of what different things might be out there. And I didn't know if there was a resource or something that kind of gave a broader idea of like what is out there for networking purposes.
I'm not aware of anything in particular. Are you?
Yeah. Yes. So
Okay, great.
that's one. Learning and development has only been around for a year, but we are a good resource to help you understand the sort of levels and all the different areas around UT where you can find groups. There are interest groups, as we mentioned before, but we have a number of different career development resources, and I'll be talking about that in 2 weeks when we talk about this in the same forum during the lunch and learn at noon. But unfortunately, there's not like a one-stop shop page that we can point you to. It's more of a consultation service. But as I say, there are some tools that we can refer you to, and I'll be going over all those in a couple of weeks.
I would also say let people know what you're interested in. So most friends aren't going, or colleagues aren't going to send you random events to join or professional organizations if they don't know that you're interested in that. So I would start letting people know you are interested in getting your feet wet, trying new things, and it could still help someone too. So you might have a colleague who really needs 5 volunteers, but feels awkward asking for more people. And that's an event that would give you a lot of insight. So you never know where you might get a lead from if people don't know that you're looking. I had made it clear, even though I was working at UT, that I was looking for a next step. And a friend who also was working at UT, but not my colleague, sent me a job posting that I ended up taking. When I was in a new mom group, someone who wasn't even working at UT at the time had a friend who worked at UT with CPE. And she said, well, I'm actually about to have back surgery. I need someone to cover my class. And so I covered the class and then pitched courses to them. And that's how I got here. But it was through like sitting at a birthday party with our babies. It was not what you would expect. And I didn't even follow up right away because I thought this isn't going to go anywhere. But then a month later, I followed up and it did go somewhere substantial. So you never know. Page 10. So I feel like there's a lot of information on this one sheet. And if you haven't heard of SMART goals before, it's really, really useful to make sure the goals that you set are all of those things, which will make it a successful goal that could actually happen. So thinking about what a long-term objective is, which you would have right around here, some options up here. Now you're linking it into how can I actually make some small steps to get there? This is, I would say, even the really hard part, because now you have to actually put down some homework, some action items. So for example, if my long-term objective is I want to write a book, then I need to have specific goals for that. Or if my objective is I want to learn more about human resources jobs, then your short-term goal can't just be I'm going to attend an HR event. It needs to be much more specific than that. You need to have a time frame in there and an endpoint and check-ins for things like that. If you're thinking of something big, like I really want to write an article, then you can't just write each week. It needs to be right for X minutes each week. Or if you're going to share something, share it with whom and when. So that's the key here, to get you having specifics so that you're not off the hook, but actually have a plan there. Look at just goal number one, going through, try to think about what one of your goals is that you can work on this week, this month, this year. How are you going to begin that? What are those action items? What does that look like? And you may not be there yet, but this is a really important page. Like, put down page 11, put a bookmark in it or a sticky note or something. Because if you don't schedule this, it's not going to happen, right? Because we have a lot of things that are urgent and unimportant going on, like the phone always ringing and the emails coming in and all of that. But the stuff like this that takes a lot of planning and focus and time may not feel urgent. And then it just goes on and gets neglected. So we want to add that urgency to it and give it some timeline, give it some deadlines, and really prioritize and take some self-care for yourself, for your career, that you are going to look at this to make sure that you have alignment with your strengths and values. And even if your job is fulfilling and satisfying right now, which is great, how can you nourish that more? How can you enrich that more and have a learning that's targeted to your natural strengths? So I have a question here. What do you mean by begin and end? Yeah, and I'll say for these types of organizers, you might not like the specific one, and that's also okay. You could say, I'm going to organize it differently, or I actually have an app that does this for me, and that's all fine too. I'm always telling clients, there's a bunch of different frameworks for you. You're not going to like all of them. Don't force yourself to work in it. But what it's getting at absolutely is finding a timeline for it, an end point, to give it that a bit of urgency. Doesn't have to be a week. I don't think that's realistic for anyone right now, but figure out where do you want to be with goal number 4 by the end of the year? Or do you just need to be at goal number 2? Because if you want to have substantial progress before 2022, then you need to map out when you're going to have goal 1, 2, 3, or 4. Or if you have an opportunity for something at goal number 3 in August, you need to get through that by then. And here's another question. What if you don't recognize the strengths in yourself that others do? How can you quantify those if you have trouble identifying them, seeing them? Yeah. So I work with a lot of clients who have imposter syndrome. It's natural for us to have that sometime, where we feel like we don't actually know what we're doing and someone's going to find out quickly. And so it can be really helpful to get feedback from others on what our strengths are. I've had clients who get really emotional and really upset when I ask them what their strengths are, or who are having trouble building on things. So I would say one thing to check on is each time you get a big work challenge, how are you processing it? Are you looking at the positives and what you could do better, or are you just looking at what could have been better and what was done wrong? Because a lot of us can be too hard on ourselves. So we want to get out of our own way with our doubts, but also to be able to realize our strengths, we need to believe those whom we trust, not every feedback, but the ones we really trust, when they notice what those strengths are. And the best way to build confidence is from experience. Okay, that's one of the best ways, which is really a hassle because then you can't just cut corners or do shortcuts. But it only builds if we can positively process those experiences.
So can I make just a comment there too? As you know, because you are a coach, this is where a coach can really be a handy relationship to have to talk you through what those hidden strengths might be. Another tool that UT Learning Development offers is a 360 assessment. It's great for finding those blind spots and hidden strengths. So it's a good starting point where you can have your customers or your peers or your boss sort of point out where you have room to grow or where you are really strong and compare that against your perception. Another thing to remember there, of course, is that perceptions are real. And our assessment tool is really focused. It's not a performative tool. It's not about performance evaluation. It really is developmental. So I say a 360 assessment, but not all 360 assessments are equal. And then that can also really help you with a coach as well.
Yeah, those are great. It also helps because you want to make sure that you don't have a strength that you think you have and others don't see as a strength, right? Like someone might say, this isn't one of your strengths. And I had a boss that told me, you don't do great at multitasking. Now, multitasking is a myth anyhow. Most people, only 2% of the population does really well. But it made me really think about that. And I realized, actually, yes, I can get really overwhelmed if I'm trying to do too much. And so that was a really good note for me to take. If I had thought that was one of my strengths and pursued more things that way, that would not have gone well. All right. So this one is also really important, the check-ins, checking your progress. Otherwise, another X amount of months or years go by and we realize like, oh, I haven't worked on this, or I lost the workbook. Okay, so the first check-in, and I will wait, like put this in your calendar right now. Like, when are you going to check in on this? And it could just be, I don't have time to fill out any more of this right now, and I have a meeting at 1, but in 3 weeks or in a month or in 3 months, I'm going to pull this out and see what my next steps are and look at it. Okay, so that's the first check-in, the very minimum. Put it in your calendar, schedule your priorities, or you're going to keep heading in the same direction you're heading now, which might be okay. I don't know. It depends on each person's personal scenario. And use your network to help with the progress. Tell people, like, this is what I'm working on. Get a spouse or friends or a best friend to support you. Tell your best friend, can you put this in your calendar, please, in a week, and bug me about it, so that you can keep going. Be persistent, be curious, and say yes to these possibilities. And then evolve if necessary. And it's always necessary to be flexible, hugely important. Almost 8 years ago, when I was first started working at MBA Plus as a leadership and communication coach, they said, can you do webinars? We love to do webinars with our students. We do some live sessions, but a lot of the webinars, because it gets more of them in different programs. And I said, I did not evolve. I said, no, I can't do webinars. Well, I was also 9 months pregnant, but I said no, which is the opposite of what I coach. It's very hard for everyone, even if you have practice. And then I went home And I wrote them and I said, that wasn't a very positive answer. I've never seen a webinar. I'm going to watch webinars. I'm going to learn how to give a webinar and I will do one. And I've done about 5 for them ever since. And we see that this is a webinar. So it's very good that I evolved because it helped prepare me for teaching virtual classes now. But my first response was, no, I don't want to evolve. So make sure that you're not getting in your own way when you get opportunities. Another thing to think about is, how are you going to prioritize this? I don't have all the answers, but I really want to make sure you consider this. How will you stay motivated? Remember those values you have. Remember the why, your values, the strengths, the pros of a potential career pivot. What does that look like? And how can you stay positive and curious? Those what ifs. What if I'm amazing at what this is? What if I love this? What if this works out in my current position or something similar? Well, thank you all so much. I hope you got to write in the workbook some and that you look at it within a week or two while it's still fresh and before you lose it, so that you can continue working on where you want to point your compass next.
Amira, as usual, just fantastic resources and great presentation. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Bye, everyone.